Do you ever have an incident or something that comes up and you just find all of a sudden that you've just overreacted and you get really upset and really worked up? And then later when you sit back and you think about it, you're like, why in the world did that upset me like it did? Or why was I triggered like I was? We'll talk about that. My name is Leslie Wells, connection coach, and I help individuals find deeper, better connections in their romantic relationships by looking at their attachment style. Our subconscious holds on to a lot of things that we are unaware of that reproject and show up in relationships. Whether it's things that happen in our childhood or from previous relationships, all of that stays within us. So what fires together wires together, meaning that in your brain, if you have an incident that happens, maybe from childhood, maybe an adult yelled at you whenever you made a mistake, and so you have thoughts that, oh gosh, I'm imperfect, I can't get things right. When that incident and that thought gets together and the neurons are firing together, it will wire pathways in your brain together. So what fires together wires together. And the brain remembers the things that fire and wire together whenever they are more painful versus the good things. So if you're ever one of those people that wonders, like, why do I remember, or why do the bad things come up for me so much when I'm not wanting them to and I'm not looking for them rather than the good things, here's why. It's because of how the brain works. The brain remembers the painful stuff more because it needs to be aware of it and it wants to remember it so that it can avoid it in the future. And this really goes back to survival. So back in the day when we were hunter and gatherers, if you got bit by a snake, if your brain did not remember that incident and really hold on to it, well, the next time you see a snake and you get by the same snake, there's going to be an injury, there's going to be a death, there's going to be a sickness, it's going to be a big problem. And so the brain very much wants to remember the things that are bad, the things that upset you, the things that cause a reaction that doesn't feel good because it wants to protect us from that in the future. This all goes back to survival. The problem is the brain cannot tell the difference between what's a true threat and what is not. So a lot of times whenever we are triggered by something, our brain will automatically send an alarm bell that something is wrong. And if we don't capture that thought and look at it and make a determination whether or not there really is something to be afraid of, our brain's going to continue on and our body's going to start to release chemicals that put our body into a trauma response. And so the brain is sort of driving everything at this point. If we do not look at the thought and look at the trigger or whatever it is that caused us to go back to that painful place. So what happens is the painful things from our past that our brain has held on to and wants to protect us from in the future based on the connections that it's made, those things will get reprojected into relationships as we age. So you'll see a lot of past wounds that you're completely unaware of. Again, this is subconscious that will come out and be reprojected onto relationships. So you might be in a safe relationship with a partner who is safe and trusting and there's no issues. But if something happened in your past where that wasn't your experience and your brain has held on to it, anything that they do that takes you back to that place, your brain is going to immediately recognize it and do its best to protect you by sending an alarm system and triggering you. And then you're going to have this response that you may not know where it came from. And that's when you end up overreacting, acting in ways that you normally wouldn't, and just not being logical. The problem is that by doing this, by living in this, if we don't figure out what we really need to be upset about and really learn to retrain our brain and reframe things in our brain so that it's not overreacting, then it causes a lot of emotional suffering in your current relationship or relationships that you have going forward. Because you will start to behave in ways that are designed to protect yourself subconsciously. And a lot of those behaviors are unhealthy, they're not productive, they don't really honor the person that you're with and recognize the situation for what it truly is. So we really don't want to deal with the emotional suffering that this can cause in our relationships. And we really don't want to be looking at our current reality through a filter of the past based on past experiences that are no longer relevant to what we're experiencing now. And so there are ways that we can go back and look at those belief systems and look at how our brain got to where it is, and we can actually reframe that and create new pathways in our brain so that we are not continuing to show up in the same ways based on the old survival mechanisms that we've had to relate to or refer back to in the past, and we can create new coping mechanisms that better serve us in the present. So if you have any questions about this or there's anything more that you want to learn, just put something in the comment section. And if you're interested in working with me and working on some of these things and figuring out what causes your triggers and figuring out better ways to show up and deal with them, then reach out. I'd love to work with you.